everyone. My name is Srishti, and I'm a rising senior at NYU studying economics and politics. My project studies the effect of socioeconomic factors and state-level variations in farmer suicides in India. I completed my project under the supervision of Dr. Shankar. Now, on average, 14,500 individuals dependent on or engaged with the agricultural sector in India have died by suicide each year between 1995, when the data on national suicides was first classified by profession, and in 2019, when the data on national suicides was last published. Accounting for a total of 364,092 farmer suicides between 1995 and 2019. Now, these persons include agricultural laborers whose primary source of income comes from agricultural activities, farmers who work on their own land, or farmers who work on land on lease. In 2001, the overall suicide mortality rate for farmers, that is suicides per 100,000 farmers, was 15.8%, which was almost 50% higher than the suicide mortality rate for the general population per 100,000 people, which was about 10.6%. In 2011, the overall suicide rate for farmers was still at least 35% higher than the suicide rate for the general population. Now, the suicide epidemic in India for farmers has been identified as an extreme manifestation of a larger agrarian crisis in rural India, which is in turn being credited to the onset of the liberalization reforms of the Indian economies in the 1990s. Now, these reforms failed to generate jobs in the formal sector at the growth rate that was required to reduce the pre-existing demographic pressure on the agricultural sector, leading to a further concentration of rural populations into agriculture. And this created an extremely undiversified rural economy and also reduced the size of operational land holdings among farmers. The reforms also pushed farmers away from growing light crops to cash crops in the expectation of better harvests and profits. This increased the use of high-cost cash crops that are mainly exposed farmers to the risk of indebtedness, in addition to making them more vulnerable to fluctuations in global prices and foreign subsidies. The new economic policies also opened up the farming sector to private trade and foreign investment, with a simultaneous decrease in public investment and state-supported incentives and subsidies, all leading to a rise in farmers' dependence on informal credit. My study draws its empirical estimation strategy from a previous study on farmer suicides in India by Jonathan Kennedy and Lawrence King, where the researchers test the hypotheses that suicide rates will be higher in states where there are more marginal farmers, where more cash crops are grown, and where there are more indebted farmers. They look at farmer suicides between 2001 and 2005. I extend the purview of my analysis to the period between 2001 and 2015, and I also introduced year and state fixed effects. So empirically, I used pooled OLS regressions for data for the period 2001 and 2015, and used year and state fixed effects. The main dependent variable in my analysis is the 8 standardized male suicide mortality rate, that is the number of suicides per 100,000 persons. My first independent variable is the proportion of marginal farmers, measured using the proportion of marginal landholdings in each state. A farmer qualifies as a marginal farmer if they own a landholding of less than 1 hectare. My second independent variable is the proportion of indebted farmers in each state. A farmer household classifies as indebted if it had any loan in cash or kind, and its value at the time of transaction was 300 rupees, which is about $5 or more. My third independent variable is the proportion of land used for non-food crops in each state. These include oilseeds, fibers, and coffee and cotton, and other crops. Delta and gamma are the state and year fixed effects, and epsilon is the stochastic error curve. I use 4 main data sets in my analysis. The data on state-wise annual suicides published by the National Crime Records Bureau, data on the proportion of marginal landholding, which is less than 1 hectare, published by the Agricultural Census Division of the Department of Agriculture and Cooperation in the form of census surveys every 5 years. Data on farmers' indebtedness, published by the National Sample Survey Organization's Situation Assessment Survey of Farmers, which was first done in 2003 and then in 2013, and data on non-food crops published by the Indian Agricultural Ministry's annual land use statistics at a glance reports. I also divide India into 18 units for the purposes of my comparison, as do the authors. All the major states separate units. The erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir is 1 unit. The states of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, that split in 2014, is 1 unit. The states of Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and MP are undivided and 1 unit, and the smaller northeastern states, excluding Assam, is 1 unit. These are the summary statistics for the 4 variables across 18 units in 15 years. Most importantly, the mean male suicide mortality rate is 14.7%. Now, preliminary results for the simple OLS are in line with the author's findings. All 3 variables have a significant and a positive relationship with suicide rates. As you can see here, for a 1% increase in proportion of marginal landholdings, we would expect a 0.172% increase in male suicide mortality rate, holding the other 2 variables constant. Similarly, we would expect male suicide mortality rate to increase by 0.196% and 0.244% for a 1% increase in the proportion of indebted farming households and the proportion of land under non-food crops, holding the other 2 constant, respectively. In using two-way state and year fixed effects, however, the proportion of marginal land holdings and the proportion of land under non-food crops no longer have a significant relationship with suicide mortality rates, albeit it's positive. Now the proportion of indebted agricultural households have a negative significant relationship with the male suicide mortality rates, as you can see here. Now, this could possibly be due to omitted variable bias, which is something I'm looking into. I'm also in the process of investigating the policy implications that this could hold. These are the sources I use, and thank you so much for listening.